And welcome to another edition of Bigfoots Pad Live. On the line with me today, I have Nick and Tim, and we are going to be talking about a topic that not very many people are aware of, at least not over here. We're going to be talking about the Australian Yowie. So that's actually the
hmm
Bigfoot over in Australia. We'll get into that in just a moment. But in the meantime, I don't have a whole lot of news stories for this week, but I have a little bit of team news. Um, so I've been keeping up with a little bit of happenings around the UFO community and UFO world, and I got a couple emails. I would say around Monday or Tuesday, where I got about 5 or 6 people were emailing me saying Richard Doty, he used to be an ex-intelligence officer for the Air Force. He was actually on the Jimmy Church Fade to Black show, and he wrote his own rendition of one of the cases that we did for the past 15 years. Uh, so of course I roasted him hardcore in the comment section and on my blog. We'll get into that on another. I'm probably in 2 weeks from now. We'll probably talk about that. Um, and then there's another UFO case that I was thinking we might get into here. I don't know if Nick and Tim haven't really got a chance to talk to me a whole lot about this yet. So I guess this week we're talking about the Yowie. Next week we're going to talk about the 1933 Italian UFO crash. Do you know a lot about that, Nick?
I know a little bit about it. I read about it quite some time ago, but I could definitely use a refresher.
What about you, Tim? Do you know a lot about that? Or
Yeah,
not?
I know a little bit about it. Like I know Mussolini had it and was supposedly in their control under their control until we liberated Italy.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that next week. I figured David Grush talked about that when he did his whistleblower thing with Newsmax. I tried to look it up.
He did talk about that too.
Yeah, there's really not a whole lot about it on YouTube that I saw. There's actually not a whole lot about it in general. So I figured we'll try to see what we could do next week. Probably,
Yeah.
we'll do that. Then I figured we'll jump onto the Richard Doty train the week after that. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Something we are trying to do. We are trying to do some live ghost hunting here pretty soon. I would say within the next, maybe iron out the kinks. It's looking like what, Nick? September, probably August or September. We'll start doing it.
Probably next month.
Probably the end of September. Yeah.
We just got a few things to work out with our camera system and getting the footage onto the internet that we're going to working out. I'm thinking. It looks like Tim wrote. Sorry, me and Tim and Nick are talking on a private chat right now. It looks like someone's requesting we talk about the Kasai Rex. Maybe we'll put that in there.
Yeah, we used to do that. We talked about it a couple times. And Nick actually that's crazy. Nick actually knew someone that was very familiar with it.
Yeah. That'll be
we should bring that up again in the future.
Maybe
that'll
we'll
be
do
an
that.
interesting
Maybe
thing.
in August. What do you think, Nick? August, maybe we'll bring that up, or maybe the end of July. Well, anyway, so since we've kind of been rambling on a little bit about us, we are going to get started with the topic today. I don't really have a whole lot of news stories. I don't want to give too much away about what Richard Doty said because that's a show in itself. I was seeing red when I listened to that interview. So, anyways.
Yeah, I heard it. It wasn't too bad, but it's very different than what we know it as.
Yeah,
for sure.
So we're going to get started with today's topic. Before I get too deep into it about like specific sightings and things, let me give a short description of what we're actually talking about. So something that's the Yowie, it's usually described as a hairy and ape-like creature standing upright at between 6'11" and 12 feet tall, it says. So it's roughly a little bit taller than the average man. Generally, from what I've read, the Yowie sounds like it's smaller than the North American Sasquatch. Many people report that this creature is, what do they call it, like the orang pendek? They call it the dwarf Sasquatch.
Yeah, it's a lot smaller because of the conditions it lives in.
Yeah, so supposedly just like typical Bigfoot, you have large feet. The Yowie footprint and tracks vary, though. Some people say that it has 5 toes. Some people report 3 toes. The foot.
Nothing much different than the North American Bigfoot too.
I was gonna say, we actually have seen both of them, the 5-foot toe prints and the 3-toed prints.
Yeah.
I figured before we get going, Tim and Nick, you guys want to talk a little bit about the footprints we've seen, or maybe about how certain regions like the South have a lot of 3-toed footprints versus other places have like the 5?
Yeah, like you said, it's Bigfoot prints. They've been known to have 3, 4, 5 toes. It all depends. Like I know the famous Boggy Creek monster. Supposedly they've had 3-toed monster prints there. I know other parts of the South too. I know we've seen both myself.
Well, Nick, you want to talk about, and when we were at our location over by Lake Tahoe, we got the 5 footprints, or the 5-toed, then we saw the 3-toed when we got that thermal footage near here.
Yeah, on our team, we found both kinds of footprints over near Lake Tahoe in a very densely forested area. We found large 5-toed footprints from what we believe to be a Sasquatch, and then on Mount Charleston, which is outside of Las Vegas, in an area deep in the woods, we found 3-toed footprints. And then when I was exploring a mountain near Las Vegas, Frenchman Mountain in the desert, I found large prints that were 4 or 5-toed. So it's, just even in the Las Vegas area, we have some unique sets of prints that have different amounts of toes.
Exactly.
So it's definitely an interesting topic.
Very interesting. Yeah, we always wonder why.
Well, I saw a thing that Lauren Coleman did a while back. It's his, what's it called? Bigfoot, Great Apes in America, or Great Apes in North America. It's one of the two. Anyways, in that book, he refers to them as napes with the letter N, the ones that have the 3-toed footprints. According to what he thinks that the 3-toed footprints, when you see like Bigfoot, Yowie, whatever, he thinks that those are more ape-like. He says the ones with 5 toes are kind of like more human-like, is what he thinks. Of course, there's not really a whole lot to back up those claims, but if you have like the human footprint like this, or you have the ape-like one where it goes off to the side like that, you figure different evolutionary traits.
Right. Yeah. Could be that. Could be interbreeding. It could be genetics, just maybe deformed. Yeah, it could be one of until we actually have one, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So back to the Yowie. So the Yowie said to have a nose that's wide and flat. Something that I kind of want to talk about. Back in around 2008, 2010-ish, I've told this story quite a bit, but I'll say it again. So we were up at our location near Lake Tahoe, and this location, basically, in order to get there, you have to drive about 2 hours on these roads where there's no traffic, 2 hours from the nearest town, and then after you drive the 2 hours, you have to get on a dirt road and drive for like an additional hour or two. Basically, this is like in the middle of nowhere, and you got to go through like different areas where there's nobody. We stayed out there, Nick, probably 3-4 days, a couple different times. We've only seen 1 or 2 cars out there ever.
Yeah, it's definitely a remote area for sure.
Yeah, so it used to be an old Boy Scout camp, actually, and they demolished the camp and converted it into a brand new, like a group campground. And this campground has hills and rocky outcrops all the way around it. It has redwood trees, thick brush, kind of like what you would picture in Northern California, where you could barely see a few feet into the brush because the woods are so thick. Nick happened to not be with us this first specific trip that we went up there, but Nick knows the story, of course.
Yeah.
It was me, Tim, and one of our former teammates. We actually were up there for 3 days, I want to say. And we were doing what they call call blasting, which is where you play supposed Bigfoot calls or Bigfoot sounds over a loudspeaker, trying to draw the creature in, almost like people would do when they're hunting like coyotes or deer or that kind of stuff. So I would say it was about 8 or 9 o'clock. We were starting to do the call blasting, and we didn't really hear a whole lot of replies. So then I would say about 11 o'clock, would you say, Tim? Probably like an hour or two later. You're on mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say about an hour or two later, we started hearing what sounded like a whooping noise, like a whooping noise, or like a high pitched whooping noise. The only way I could compare it is like a high pitched whooping noise. We thought it was a bird at first, and it was coming from this area close to where we were camping, and you could hear like the whole forest got eerily quiet when this whooping noise started. Like you could, the only way I could explain it is that it seemed like all the bugs stopped. You heard no birds. You heard nothing. And all of a sudden you got like a really weird, uneasy sound, like an uneasy feeling. And the sound kept going on. And me, Tim, and our other friend, we started hearing what sounded like footsteps coming through the creek and coming, like you could hear twigs snapping and things. I'd say it was, what do you think, Tim? Maybe like 100 feet away, maybe?
Probably.
50,
Yeah. If that, between 80 and 100 feet.
You could have thrown a rock in this creek. That's how close it was. If there was no trees, you could easily throw a rock there. So we started hearing this whooping noise and hearing these footsteps. And like I said, the hair stood up on the back of your neck. And the only thing I could compare it to was like a weird primal, like a deep fear started, like a I shouldn't be here type feeling. I got to get out of here immediately type feeling. Well, me, Tim, and our other friend, we kind of toughed it out. And we were standing there. It's dark, pitch black at this point. Like I said, there's no towns anywhere nearby. We started hearing footsteps. We were looking this way at the creek. We started hearing footsteps coming from this way and coming from behind us. So we started hearing footsteps from this way, that way, and behind us. And meanwhile, this whooping noise is going on. And the whooping noise would occasionally stop. And when it would stop, like these footsteps seemed like they would kind of stop. Right, Tim? That's the best I could explain.
Exactly. Like
something
was
we've never done.
us.
Something was, you felt like you're being stalked. Something we've never ever released to this day, and I think Nick's only heard it once or twice. I'm thinking maybe what we'll do on one of these weeks coming up is we'll play the sound clip, because we didn't have the camcorder running at this point. I don't think we had one, did we, Tim? At that point?
No, but we did catch it. I think we did the first time. I think we did catch our reactions and stuff though.
Oh yeah, we did have it because I remember we recorded that. So, anyways,
remember the video?
I think maybe in a week or two we'll play the video, and then we'll play all that kind of stuff. We'll just play it in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, so we started hearing these footsteps, and sorry, I'm trying to pull up the video on our YouTube here to play for everybody. Yeah, so we started hearing these footsteps coming, and next thing I know, the footsteps seemed like they stopped, like altogether. Like suddenly it stopped, but we could still hear something coming from this way, like directly in front of us. And me, Tim, and our friend were starting to get freaked out. So we're literally standing almost back to back at this point, like in a triangle shape. And I remember I had a spotlight that was looking out. I was kind of scanning around the woods. Tim had a spotlight, and our other friend had a lantern, kind of for like close range stuff.
Yeah.
And it's always a joke with us that whoever has the lantern is the vulnerable one in the group. Like if something's going to come at you, it's always an inside joke.
Very much.
Yeah, so we started hearing these footsteps coming in front of us, like I was saying. And I thought I saw, when I was looking ahead, kind of out of the corner over this direction, I thought I saw movement. So I turned my spotlight on and shined it over there, and it looked like when the beam of light hit, it looked like the twigs were kind of moving a little bit, like something that just walked by and hit them. And we were looking over in this direction, and all of a sudden, all of our lights kind of went that way. And I remember when we were looking this way, out of this direction, I know I saw like something black and kind of large moving in the darkness, like a shadowy figure. And the next thing I know, I kind of flipped my light over this way. And when my light went that way, my beam of light hit a creature. And this creature, when the light hit it, it was the shape of a man, like a humanoid. But the thing that scared me about it is this thing was covered in hair. And I don't even really think it registered with me at that point that it was covered really in hair. What scared me was when the light hit it, it took off at such high speed. It cleared this dirt road because it cleared the road. It was basically on the edge of the road. Like it had gone through the camping area and it would cross through a wooded area into the middle of this road. It cleared that road in what do you say, Tim? Probably 2 or 3 strides, basically. This thing
Easily, but yeah, no more than 3.
And if you're walking like me, you were like one of us are walking, it would take us at least, what do you say, Tim, 10 steps to cross that road at least.
Yeah, 10.
This thing was clearing the road.
Steps.
It was doing huge strides, like the way it would walk. And it was almost like I can compare it to like a dog or a cat, where they could go from 0 to full speed in like a short amount of time. That's kind of what it did. And I remember I got a really good side profile view at it. And this thing seemed like it kind of had a flat nose, like the way that they described the Yowie. That's where I'm getting with this. And I remember when the lights hit, it had its eyes glowed like a yellow color, almost like a coyote or a bear or something. Like you could tell this wasn't a man in a suit. There's no way it could pick up speed like that. And this thing cleared the road in like 3 steps. It leapt. It took 3 steps and jumped into the wooded area on the side of the road. And like I said earlier, the woods are so thick, you can't. There's no way that you could see where this thing went. Well, me, Tim, and our old friend, we actually got the balls to go and looking after this thing, and we went in after it. And the whole time we're doing it, I'm just thinking this is a bad idea, like really bad. Right? That's what I was thinking. This
a little
is a
bit.
bad idea. This is a really bad idea.
Because I just remember wading through the forest and it sounded big, whatever it was.
It was huge. I got a good
I could
side
hear it.
profile view of it.
And then, then 2 years later, a couple years later, we went back with Nick to the same location and had the same exact experience.
All right, we'll get into that in a moment because we're going to talk about
we need to get on
sighting in just a moment. I'm going to share my screen really quick. I know we're getting a little bit off topic from the Yowie, but just so people know what we're talking about. This is from 2000. This is the last time we were out there. It's been a while since we were there. This is that road that creature cleared in like 3 steps, like I said. It's kind of like a 1 or 2. It's 2 cars could fit on it, I'd say. It's trying to see if I could get the exact area that it cleared. There's me and Nick. Nick looks like Bigfoot in that one. Well, you guys get the picture. Here's Nick actually next to one of the things that we thought was a footprint. That's another thing. We've never shared this footprint. We casted that footprint. We've never shared that with the public. So I'm thinking maybe we'll play the sound files and we'll share that with the public on one of these upcoming shows.
And it's hard to tell from there, but there are actual like foot. You can tell where toes were at and everything.
Maybe we'll do like a show where we talk about like our own Bigfoot encounters and some of the stuff we've done coming up. That'd be a pretty good
we
show.
should.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyways, where I'm getting at with this was the creature looked like it had a flat nose, similar to what they say the Yowie had. And I remember one other quick note. When the flashlight hit it, what scared me was the whole body was covered in hair except for the face. The face did not have hair on it, which is kind of freaky to think about. It looked basically like a big monkey man, but it had no hair on the face. I remember the hands looked like it didn't have the hands didn't really have hair on it either.
Yeah.
Did you have anything?
I actually got a picture brought up. On my other screen. I can share it if you want.
You can share it real quick, and then we'll
of like what the Yowies reported to look like.
Yeah, sure. If you want to share your screen, go ahead.
So people have an idea. I like literally the name of the article. If you never want to sleep again, look at this picture.
It's loading right now.
Yeah. But no, I always found the Yeti or the Yowie very fascinating because not only because you hear of all these other typical. Sorry, is it taking forever?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, you're telling a story. We could.
Yeah. Anyways, you hear about all these other places that are very typical of Bigfoot sightings, But who would expect the outback?
Exactly.
Man, I don't know why it's loading so slow, but I just had it brought up. And
Here it goes.
okay, is it showing up now?
Yep, I got.
That's what it's reported to look like.
That's kind of what it looked like. The thing we saw, except for the head was like the face kind of extended a little bit further.
Yeah, so that's what it's supposed to look like. Looks very mean.
Yeah, definitely not something I'd want to encounter.
Well, you kind of did.
We'd have to.
Well, we'll go into that a little bit later too.
And evidently, a city called Kilcoy, their mascot is the Yowie in Australia. I did
Oh, wow.
just notice
Yeah.
that. I'm
So
trying to
getting
look for a
back on
specific
topic.
sighting video.
Oh, we could play sighting video in just a moment. I have one quick note, and then we can play it if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
So some describe the Yowie as timid or shy, and others describe the Yowie as sometimes being violent or aggressive. So I guess the creatures have their own personalities. It sounds like they're not all. That's kind of like a dog or a cat, I guess, where they kind of have their own personalities, their own temperaments. I guess is the way I was.
Yeah.
Thinking.
Hey, Bigfoot has been known to have that too, and Yeti have been known to have their own traits.
Oh yeah. Second.
Great apes too. Like if it's a type of primate, they've been known to have different personalities and things too.
I wrote you and Nick something about a show in the private chat real quick.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think it's very interesting. Yeah.
So
That's actually the video I was trying to find. That sighting video.
I have a couple I do want to play on here. What do you think, Nick? Sorry, I was writing the private chat really quick. I was sending you and Tim that message. Yeah, so anyways, this is interesting. I wrote, does the Yowie migrate? There's a website called yowiesightings.com, and a lot of the sighting reports I'm going to talk about tonight come from that website. That website's actually pretty awesome. I figured that I should probably give them some kind of credit before we start.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Some of their stories. So this is one of their quotes off their website. It says the Yowie migrates to various locations in the course of the year. We're beginning to believe that rather than migrating, Yowies have a very large territory range, and they continually roam this area in search of food. We've noticed sightings and encounter reports from some areas occurring at similar times of the year over a decade or so. Something I kind of wanted to mention, Nick, since we're kind of comparing this to different like Bigfoot and Sasquatch-like creatures around the world, I guess. Can you talk a little bit about our theories on the sand yeti and like what that is and what our theories are on that as far as migration goes?
Well, we believe that there's a Sasquatch or an ape that lives in the Nevada desert in the southwest of the United States, at large. Mm-hmm. We believe that it is a Bigfoot, a Sasquatch that migrates between different mountain chains using the desert as a highway, you could say, between different mountains like Mount Charleston and Mount Potosi, for example, two mountains that are prominent in the Las Vegas area. So in the warmer months, the Sasquatch, the sand yeti, spends its time up in the mountains where there's plenty of water and other resources. And then when it cools down, we believe it comes down through the desert and makes treks to another mountain in order to secure another source of resources.
Exactly.
It basically lives a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle. But that's kind of what we believe in terms of the sand yeti.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I know the sand yeti, it kind of travels, like you said, between the desert areas and the mountains. But depending on the kind of like the time of year, I guess. You have anything to add on to that, Tim? We do have two people in the chat that are asking us a question. Vatir? She says hello. And then we do have Luis Felipe. He says, hey, are Yowies dangerous? We'll get into that in just a moment because that does actually answer a question as far as something that we're going to get into in just a moment. I know you're sharing.
And actually, Jeremy, I'm trying to share your screen. I was going to say this is very interesting. This is actually an eyewitness drawing of what he said it looked like.
Go down a little bit.
Is it loading?
It's loaded already. It looks like half the screen's cut off, though, or the picture's cut off.
Is it loading or going?
There you go.
Slow.
Yeah, now I see it. Mm-hmm. Pretty cool.
Oh.
It looks like you're freezing
Would you want to see that in the middle of the night, Nick?
No, not really. Looking through my tent.
Very interesting, isn't it?
Hey, Tim. Do you know Viatir, Tim? Do you know her on Facebook? Do you know her on Twitter? She said she was retweeting us.
Sorry, let me go back. Oh yeah, absolutely. I follow her on Twitter. Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. So continuing on. So before we get into kind of like the specifics of where it's seen and everything, I did want to mention briefly kind of like the origins of the Yowie. So the origin of the name Yowie to describe unidentified Australian hominids is unclear. The term was in use in 1875 among the Kamilaroi. It's some indigenous people over there. Some of the I can't say that again. Kamilaroi people. I think it's Kamilaroi people, and documented in Reverend William Ridley's Kamilaroi and other Australian languages. There's something called the Yowie. It's a spirit that roams the earth at night, I guess, is what it means in that language. Some modern writers suggested that it arose from the Aboriginal legends of the Yahoo. Robert Holden recounts several stories that support this in the 19th century, including his European account from 1842. So again, this is from 1842. This is probably the oldest one that I know.
Long before modern day sightings. So.
Oh yeah. So the natives of Australia, this is a quote, they believe in the Yahoo. This being is described as resembling a man of nearly the same height, with long white hair in this case, hanging down from the head all over its features. The arms are extraordinarily long, furnished at the extremities with great talons, and the feet are turned backwards. It's kind of odd. So that flying from, and when it flees from man, the imprint of the foot appears as if it's being ran, going in the opposite direction. Altogether, they describe it as a hideous monster of unearthly character and an ape-like appearance. So I don't know what the feet backwards are all about. Have you ever heard this, Tim or Nick?
I've heard of it. I don't know what to think of it, though. I'll try to see if this will work. But this is supposedly a picture that was taken by a game camera.
I can see it pretty good on that. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I figured I showed on here rather than freeze my screen again.
This I didn't know, Tim. Luis Felipe says the feet are backwards. It reminds him of the Sisamite, the Mexican Bigfoot. Now that's something I don't really know a whole lot about.
Yeah, me neither. That's we might have to do some more research and do a show.
Well, David's from Mexico. David would be a good one to have on about that. He lived there for most of his life. So, Nick,
I got one more too, and I got one more. These are supposed to be the best evidence of it.
I have the videos of at least one of those from.
Oh, okay.
So, Nick, do you think it sounds almost like the Jersey Devilish kind of description, the 1842 description that they gave?
Yeah, it does sound a lot like the Jersey Devil for sure.
The feet being backwards and kind of like the extraordinary qualities.
Yeah, I definitely think that his description was a little trumped up due to his imagination. You know, that our mind tends to exaggerate memories, but whatever he saw back then must have been terrifying and awe-inspiring at the same time.
Well, I know that they were saying, like, over in Indonesia, they were giving, like, descriptions of gorillas, different types of gorillas like that, too, though. like before they became mainstream. I know they were saying some missionaries were describing the gorillas as having like superpowers and things before they became like widely known. So, oh, sorry, it looked like you were going to say something, Tim.
No, sorry, I was just I'm posting on the Twitter. Sorry.
That's okay. So another story about the name was collected from an Aboriginal source, suggests that the creature is part of the dream time. So I guess like part of the kind of like the Twilight zone or whatever you want to call it.
Or a different dimension or something.
Now this is a pretty good name. Old Bungaree, a Gunada Aboriginal, said at one time there were tribes of them, the Yahoos is what he's talking about, and they were the original inhabitants of the country. He said that they were the old race of blacks, the Yahoos, and the blacks used to fight and the blacks beat them most of the time. But the Yahoo always made away with some of the blacks as being a faster runner for the most part. So I'm guessing they're talking about the Aboriginal people.
That's my guess too.
Yeah, by a term that
that's what it sounds like.
That term would not go well nowadays if you've used that term. But
no.
So Nick, so my first question is, what do you think happened? It said they were grabbing these Aboriginal people, running off with them. I know this is like conjecture, but like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you go back into the fossil record and even our own DNA, there's plenty of evidence showing that Homo sapiens interacted with other hominids tens of thousands of years ago, and we had clear interaction and mating with them sometimes. So this legend or the story here is depicting what had been going on for thousands of years. Presumably the Yowie, if they are a long lost archaic humanoid, then they would have been fighting our ancestors and running off with women and children, killing the men. So they'll do it today if they did it back then. So it's believable. Again, we have evidence of humans Homo sapiens interacting with other early humans. So this is just an illustration of that situation.
What do you think, Tim? Do you have anything to add on to that real quick? Like about stories about
like I said, there are different proven, like Nick said, different races of early Homo sapiens and just other creatures have intermixed. So maybe they were trying to take the locals for breeding purposes or as war trophies. Who knows?
Supposedly, there's stories from Canada, and I know for sure in northern Nevada of like in the Jarbidge Mountains. It was literally like the Jarbidge. The creature translates to man-eater, creature eats man or something like that.
Yep, I remember that.
And they were saying in Lovelock, Nevada, there was a race of hairy giants that would eat people. There's like some kind of caves up there where they supposedly found skeletons in the early 1900s.
Yep. Yeah, I was just going to say we should do a show on that. I always thought that was fascinating.
I always thought that was fascinating too, actually. Supposedly, they're in some kind of museum up there. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't figure it out. Didn't you look into that at one point, Nick?
Yeah, I think I found the location of some of the things I recovered from that cave, but it's been years since I looked at that, so I definitely have to go back and look it up.
So here's something interesting. So YowieSightings.com, it says that they have reports of the Yowie eating dead kangaroo, dingoes, foxes, and deer, as well as taking dogs, cats, and chickens. So it sounds like it's like
I read about that too, that they take all sorts of different creatures, even cats and dogs. I read.
It almost sounds like a meat eater. I didn't see any kind of like non-meat items on there. You guys want to talk a little bit about like
probably has to being in the outback, it probably has to scrounge for food.
Yeah,
well, from what we've seen,
it's going to be an opportunistic eater for sure.
The sand yeti, from what we've seen, we have some weird stories. Most of those are kind of like omnivore type stories. One of the weirdest ones I know of is there's a town called Blue Diamond, Nevada. And this is kind of like a forest. The forest is kind of near the town. It's not in the forest, but it's kind of close. One of the weirdest stories was there was literally a woman that was baked a pie in like 2008 or 2007. And she said that the creature came and stole the pie or was eating the pie out of the window when she turned around. You remember that one, Nick?
Yeah, I remember that.
That too.
That was a weird story. It was like a blueberry pie, I think she said. So we've had it eaten animals, dogs and cats, berries, leaves, and randomly blueberry pie randomly. So, continuing on, there's a guy named Jonathan Swift. He says that Yahoos I mentioned something similar to a Yahoo in Gulliver's Travels, the book, and European traditions of wild men are also cited as possible source. Furthermore, great public excitement was aroused in Britain in the early 1800s when the first arrivals of captive orangutans for display were brought. So basically, in short, they're saying that maybe that they called them Yahoos because that's kind of what they called a similar creature in Gulliver's Travels. And they're thinking that possibly they were just kind of referring to the creature as a term that they already knew.
That's true.
And that the term Yowie could be a branch off the term Yahoo. If that's the case, that means the Australians and British were calling the creature, they're referring to it as the same thing. In a way, that means the author of Gulliver's Travels kind of gave the creature its name in a weird sense. But can you imagine though, like a lot of the early Australian settlers were prisoners. They said Australia was a prison colony basically at one point. Mm-hmm. You're a criminal in England, you get shipped off to some island full of poisonous snakes and spiders. You're fighting for your life, trying to survive. Desert. Yeah, and then there's some kind of giant hairy creature terrorizing the little town.
Yeah, terrify you.
Looks like your research.
Like I'm reading right now, it's primarily seen in the Australian Capital Territory, New South Wales, and New South Wales has a lot of sightings. In the Northern Territory, Queensland, yeah, there's a lot of sightings.
While you're talking about that, I'm going to show. Here you go, Tim. Yeah, I don't know if you and Nick could see that. That's kind of where we're looking when we're referring to Yowie sightings.
Yeah.
So it's mostly seen on like the East Coast. I don't know if that's
it says right here the New South Wales is the big time, in Queensland too.
I don't know if it's because most people live on the east or if it's because you have to pass that huge desert.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with their geography, but
are you familiar with the geography of Australia, Nick?
I think most people do live on the east, the center of the country.
Yeah, and on the coast, that's all I know.
I think it's even harsher than the Mojave Desert that we live in, the outback. So there's not going to be a lot of people out there. Imagine getting some of the sightings from those people that work for like companies and whatnot.
I know Mad Max could survive out there. He probably seen
it. Yeah.
So let me go back to share my screen for just a moment again. So I got a satellite picture of Australia, just like the whole country in general. That's basically what you're looking at as far as like mostly like a massive desert, really. Then you could kind of see like Sumatra and like Indonesia up here towards the top.
Mm-hmm. Another cool place we'd like to go and discuss their cryptids one day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Hopefully not get kidnapped up there.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Okay, so now we're gonna kind of let's see. So we have two different comments I want to put on there. So Viatir says, Gulliver's Travels makes me think of the Sasquatch in western North Carolina. They're in the same area as the Cherokee Little People. The other one we have is from Linda, and she says, New South Wales has forests and the Blue Mountains. Queensland has rainforest. I actually did not know that because I
knew it did. I couldn't tell you the geography, like the areas. Like I said, I've heard it. I know it has random waters and forests and stuff. I just couldn't tell you what part.
I do know that Blue Mountain, they make coffee there because you see it in the store. That's one thing I know, they make coffee there. So we're going to get into some of the sightings real quick. Like I said, a lot of the sightings I'm about to talk again are from yowiesightings.com. So I'm giving them credit.
Yeah, I was reading their site. They have a lot of good stuff on there. So I definitely recommend checking it out.
So the first European report of the Yowie I found is from an article in 1789. And it has a title. This is a quote, a description of a wonderful large man brought from Botany Bay. The report details how the large 9-foot-tall creature was captured while sleeping and brought to England and displayed to the public. This is a copy of the original report. It's from a place called Byron Bay. And Byron Bay was founded in 1860. It's a coastal town in northern New South Wales. In 1896, Byron Bay was declared a town, followed by the Shire Declaration in 1906. The area was originally established as a timber port and was the main port between Newcastle to the south and the port of Brisbane in Queensland. In modern times, Byron Bay is a popular holiday destination. Before I keep going on here, I actually do have a map of Byron Bay of where a lot of the sightings were, at least on this one specific website. So
cool.
if you could see this is from YowieSightings.com. You could see basically where a lot of these sightings take place. Looks like most of them take place in this forest.
That is really cool. I like the way they do it.
What do you have to say about it, Nick, before we keep going on this? Is Nick there? I don't know if Nick's frozen or if he can hear me.
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
I was like, what do you have to say about that, Nick? It does look like they're mostly in the forested regions, like Linda was saying.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. The Yowie is not going to be hanging out in the outback or in the major urban areas where it doesn't have any form of shelter. So, of course, it's going to take a refuge in the forests, just like Sasquatch would do in North America and other places.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did see, I can't remember if it was Destination Truth. Way back in there, I remember I watched his episode when he went there, and there was actually like mountains and tall grasses and stuff too for like the different terrains it could hide in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
See, 1867. I'm looking for. All right. So one more quick thing, real quick. I forgot to mention this when we were looking at that map. So what we're looking at is this sighting took place right here that I'm about to talk about. I forgot to point that out. Of course, at that time, I'm guessing Byron Bay wasn't a big destination. It actually doesn't even really look that big on here, to be honest.
We'd want to go to Byron Bay.
Of course.
Yeah, so continuing on, this is from 1867. This is from a group of men on horseback. Henry Kay wrote they saw a great hairy creature, deep ochre in color, moving along the Belongil Beach. Sorry, I can't say some of these words. The Belongil Beach in the strangest of manner. The witness goes on to say that its legs moved strangely as it ran. Its upper body remained steady while swinging its long arms in large arcs. It navigated the beach to the bush beyond at such speeds as to leave our party dumbfounded. Kay then reports that the party gave chase to the creature after observing the creature vanish into the scrub and lost its footprints in the sand. Kay reported that the creature appeared to be of giant proportions and its footprint was several times larger than the largest member of our party. So again, they said that this creature had long arms, which is something I thought was odd. Because when you look at the Patterson-Gimlin creature, this is where I learned a lot of this. They were saying that great apes, actually, their arms hang down to roughly where their knees are.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that humans, of course, ours go basically roughly to our waist. So I thought this was kind of cool. That's before that was mainly known to science. They said the creature ran at incredible speed. And I know I was mentioning earlier the creature that we encountered in 2008 or 2010. That creature went from 0 to full speed in, 1 or 2 strides? So the description of the creature was before Bigfoot went mainstream. And I think this makes it less likely to be a hoax or a fake. What do you guys think before we continue on to the next sighting?
Yeah, I don't think this person had anything really to gain from
Exactly.
the story out there. And like Jeremy said, the details about the arms going down longer than a man's and it having incredible running speeds really coincide with what we know now about apes
Exactly.
and Sasquatch in general.
That was from the 1700s, you said, Jer?
1867 is that one.
1860. Wow. Well, no, I agree.
Yeah, so continuing on, this next one, it's in 2019. There was 2 bushwalkers were confronted by a black-haired giant on Hughes Trail in the Mount Jerusalem area. The bushwalker, I keep calling them bushwhackers. The bushwalkers reported the creature came out of nowhere and to be standing directly in front of them. They report standing motionless, staring at the creature, which was staring back at them. They said it appeared to be taking in huge breaths as if it was about to race towards them, and then turned and crashed deep into the bush before they lost sight and sound of it. The guy that reported this, I guess he's saying that he felt like he was threatened by this creature. It was aggressive. I thought it almost sounded like it was hyperventilating, like a fight or flight mode. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean,
Sounds like it was ready for something. If it's breathing hard, that'd be scary. You look up and you see it going. I'd be like, what the heck?
Oh, dude,
Nick
Nick,
would
I want
want to see
to
that.
pants, to be honest.
yeah,
Nick
I
would
mean,
want to
it's
see
not
that.
something that you want to run into. But I think it was just
Sorry,
trying
had me ready.
to
Tim's
display-
impression had me ready to.
It's like breathing in deep.
Remember, Nick, they
You get
said
the
the
impression.
creature, when it didn't see them, it was just standing there hanging out. Then also, once it saw them, started breathing real heavy, like it was going crazy.
That'd freak
That's
you
a good
out.
what if question. Nick.
Yeah, I think it was just trying to show its dominance and assert itself.
Exactly. Maybe they were in its territory.
Too.
Well, for sure. This next one took place in a place called Munna Creek in 2022. So this is only about a year old. Late in the evening on April 5th, this is kind of a long story, by the way. Late in the evening of April 5th of 2022, Paula Hazel was driving from Maryborough, Queensland, towards Biggenden to meet up with some friends. As
I love
Paula
these
reached-
names.
Oh yeah, I'm not used to saying some of these names. As Paula reached the T-Bar area, it's a town, she noticed her car had a problem and stopped on the side of the road. She had a life-changing encounter. This is Paula's account from what happened that night, and a lot of these are quotes. She says, I had to drive to Biggenden from Maryborough to see some family that had left later, and I left later than I expected, which meant that I was going to be driving home in the dark. I finally left Maryborough at about 7:30 at night and headed through Maryborough West along the Maryborough-Biggenden Road. This road is a rural road, which is generally quiet with little traffic at this time of night, and I've driven this road many times over the years without incident. It was 40 minutes into her trip, and her temperature gauge on her car started showing that the car was overheating. So Paula pulled over to see what was going on.
Oh god, I see where this is going.
Yeah, you think, Nick, you can see something bad happening in just a second?
Yeah.
So she said it was strangely quiet when she pulled the car over on the side of the road. She says, I couldn't hear any cows or any frogs. It was just still. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier. When we had that encounter, it's almost like a weird primal, like your hair stands up, something's not right type of feeling.
Yeah.
She says it was still, but I remember thinking it was very peaceful. And this is a common thing people describe with Bigfoot encounters. And she says as she was putting water in her car, she heard movement at the nearby bush along with a deep huff sound. So it made like a grunt or like a type sound. She says, I turned to look, expecting to see a bull. I guess there's cows nearby because there was cattle pastures all around. I couldn't make out anything, and I grabbed the torch and shone it in the direction where I heard the huff sound. My torch, and this is pretty scary. She says, my torch was illuminating a hugely tall, dark, and hairy monster of a creature, and I couldn't believe the thickness of this thing. It was just massive. It was standing on two
Your car
legs.
breaks down and you see that.
Yeah, and you're overheating,
that would
so you
not be
can't
fun.
drive.
Yeah, and you're overheating where you can't get and leave.
Yeah, she says, and you're by yourself. She says, it was standing on two legs like a human. Its hair looked dark and reddish brown. Its face was also dark, but more grayish, and it looked leathery, like it had been out in the sun. Its eye sockets were huge, and I thought I could see sort of an opaque red-colored glow from its eyes when the torch hit it. She says, I grabbed the torch off the ground. She dropped her torch. She picked it up, aimed it back at the creature, and I almost screamed because I saw its eyes blink in the torchlight. It stood still, looking straight at me with its long arms hanging motionless at the side, and I was unable to move with fear.
That sounds
My mind
terrifying.
was racing. There's a couple more sentences. She says, my mind was racing and my heart was thumping so hard trying to comprehend what I was seeing, and I was feeling a sense of dread. But I managed to move backwards to the car door at an instant. I was in the seat, and I started up the car with such great relief. I dropped the torch on the ground, and I flattened the accelerator and sped off on the gravel road as fast as possible. My last sight of the creature was in my periphery of the headlights, watching it. It was watching me as I sped away. I drove furiously along the road for some time, and I got a grip and settled down and finally made it to Biggenden. I've never been so shocked and scared in my life.
That sounds
So-
terrifying as a middle-aged man, let alone a
little
woman.
So, real quick, Nick,
A very neat story, though.
do you think it could have been the cattle farms that lured the creature out to where the woman was near the road? This question I was going to answer.
That is likely food source.
Nick looks like he's sleeping.
Well, yeah, it would be attracted to the cows. Then also there are other things like the animal feed itself. Perhaps if the Yowie is omnivorous, there's water, maybe a place for it to hide. So a settlement like that would attract the Yowie and many other wild animals.
Yep.
So Linda said at least she had a flashlight. I couldn't imagine seeing that silhouette in the dark. Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, very true.
I'd wanna crap my pants probably if that was me.
Me too.
So
Yeah,
this
that
is
would be
something
terrifying.
this is something I wanted to play. I know we were talking about how peaceful and how quiet it was when the creature was around. And I was talking about when we had our encounters. We had 2 or 3 encounters over the years, how peaceful and quiet it was. Nick, you want to set the scene for your first trip to our location over by Lake Tahoe and how peaceful it was and how silent it was and still in the woods right when the creature started doing its thing. And when you're done, I'll show the video for the audience when you're done. But I was saying if you could set the scene real quick.
Well, yeah, I had attended a trip back to that site where they had seen the Sasquatch a couple of years prior to me going, and it was dark, probably about 8 or 9 at night, and it had gotten very quiet, like has been stated earlier, where you didn't hear bugs, you didn't hear any animals, no bird, not even an owl. Now,
Yeah.
It was eerie. It felt like you were walking on the set of a horror movie, except this horror movie was true. And we had started doing our nightly thing where we were doing wood knocking by taking a stick and banging it on a tree to see if we would get a response. And then also I picked up a pebble and I threw it out into the trees and I started whistling to see if I could get a response.
Mm-hmm.
I was just whistling like, lips are kind of dry, so I can't do it as loud, but I was whistling into the forest, throwing pebbles, and to our astonishment, pebbles were being thrown back at us.
Mm-hmm.
Thickness of the trees, and then something whistled back at me.
Yep, got it on film.
It was repeating what I was doing, literally a monkey see, monkey do situation. It blows my mind to just contemplate that encounter.
But can you describe to the audience, so like, what was the woods like? What was the ambiance of the woods before, during, and after all this is going on?
Well, before it,
or like the feelings that you had, like.
Yeah, it was eerie, and it was like walking into a horror movie. If you were just about to meet the monster, it's like when the characters are going into the old house and Leatherface kicks the door down and has a chainsaw. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Look at
good analogy.
Not even a cricket was chirping in the woods. No birds. There were no animals scurrying about. It was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. It was surreal. That's really the best thing you can say. It was surreal. It was just something that's hardly believable because you're standing out in the middle of this very thick forest area and you don't hear anything, not a sound.
For sure. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. I'm going to play the video of this encounter that Nick's talking about. Again, this is from 2010. So the footage isn't exactly like HD modern day stuff. Okay, so here we go. Let me turn up my volume a little bit. Right after this. Let's try this. So let me go back a little bit. Again, this is like what Nick was saying. You could hear how silent the background is. It's completely silent. What time at night you think this was, Nick?
Probably about 8 or 9 o'clock.
It's like that right there is not us. Is it? All right. So again,
Sound was kind of low, but
I could turn it up louder if you want to watch it again.
that's all right. I just want to say while we were doing that, just right before that, I was reading a very interesting story. This would terrify you too. So one, there's two. These are both involved truckers. One, this guy pulled on over to the side of the road to get a nap. So he said he'd been dozing off for no more than maybe 5 minutes, and something started slamming on the hood of his car. And he turned on and he looked on the car, and it was just snarling, and it's beating on his car, and he had to slam it in reverse. Yowie.
Jesus.
And then another one involves another trucker in New Queensland. It said he was driving on the freeway, or I don't know, I'm sorry, on some sort of a road, and just randomly ran out of the forest and like stopped in the road, so he slammed on his brakes, and it was just feet within his car, and again started slamming his hands on the door on the. It said it dented his trunk or hood of his car.
Jeez.
So those settings didn't sound very shy.
Not at all.
No.
So here's one other thing. So we got a couple things in the chat that people were saying, and then we'll go back to some sighting stuff. Linda says that sounds like a common Bigfoot encounter situation. I think she's referring to either it being really quiet, or maybe when we were talking before that about it coming out
or the flashlight.
Yeah,
The lady with the flashlight, or the torch. Excuse me.
Well, Viateur also wrote us again. She says, "Have you guys been to was it Hemis Falls Campground in New Mexico? There was activity when I went back in May."
Huh.
Well, I know Nick was studying the Sasquatch over in New Mexico at one point. We were thinking about doing kind of like a Bigfoot ghost trip at one point, and we were thinking of hitting up Roswell. Of course, you got to while you're out there.
We used to do our paratours.
Yeah, we need to go out and do that again.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's been years, actually like a decade almost, I think, since we did a paratour.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, Linda says the quietness where it gets real quiet and you can hear like a pin drop type feeling. One more quick thing before I get into more Yowie sightings. I know we caught something on thermal footage that we haven't quite released to the public yet. We kind of showed it briefly on one of our first shows back when we started doing this Bigfoots Pad live show. We don't have to show the footage right now because we do need to do some kind of release for that. But Nick, can you talk about a little bit of, we had that primal feeling, that quietness, that where all the forest seemed like it got silent all of a sudden. We had that happen right when we found the footprints, and also when we heard a strange dragging sound right when we recorded the thermal footage. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, before we heard the whistling and the rocks being thrown in addition
Oh, no,
to...
not at that location, the Mount Charleston one.
Oh, okay. So we heard something like being dragged through the forest around us, and it sounded like somebody was dragging like a I don't know, carcass or some large mechanical thing. It was just like it was really odd, and it kind of made us do a 360 and look around to see what was going on, and we didn't see anything, but we heard it. And again, there was nothing in the trees. Now, this was during the colder time of the year, so it wouldn't be expected to have crickets and other insects buzzing around, but again, not even an owl hooting off in the distance. It was completely dead silent. It's hard to describe. It's something that you have to experience yourself to really get an idea. The best thing to do would be to like maybe get some headphones, go in your bedroom and turn off all the lights, soundproof headphones, and then turn on a really loud noise that pops up out of nowhere and kind of shakes you in your consciousness. That's probably the best way to describe what it was that night. And then shortly after we heard the dragging noise, we recorded a humanoid figure moving amongst the trees with our thermal image camera.
I know we say this all the time, and I know we really do mean this. We plan to have some kind of like a watch party on here, or a release party of some kind. We recorded this creature on thermal footage for what, Nick? At least a good 2 minutes, probably, at least.
Yeah, a couple of minutes.
It was in the middle of a snowstorm, like on top of a mountain. It was pretty weird. So getting back on topic, we have the Ozarks Bigfoot Research Organization says hello.
Well, hello.
Hey, what's up, guys?
So, one more thing. So we're going to get back on topic, talking about some sightings here. This one's from T-Bar, Queensland, from 2014. A man named Romney, this is one of my favorites. This one's actually pretty terrifying. A man named Romney and his girlfriend were camping in their camper van when they were scared away in the middle of the night. They pulled over near a water hole with light brush and open pastures all around. It looked like good grazing area for cattle, Romney was saying. I guess Romney's the one that submitted this. When the sun was setting, when it was starting to set, the couple decided to take a walk around the camp. While walking, they suddenly heard a long howling noise coming off in the distance. So you can see where this is going. The howls went on for about 10 minutes or so. So the couple, of course, you hear, this is something I don't understand. So the couple decides to go back to their camp and start barbecuing. Think about this. Before we even go forward, you're sitting there, Nick. You're sitting with your wife or your girlfriend. You hear some kind of strange howling noise that scares the crap out of you. So what do? You go back and start barbecuing in the middle of the night. Holy crap. So anyways, you can see where this is going. So they do their barbecue, they go to bed. At about 2 a.m., Romney gets woken up in the middle of the night by his girlfriend nudging him. She was absolutely she was absolutely, hear what I was telling Nick, Tim? I don't know if you heard what I said.
Oh, no, sorry. I stepped away for just a second.
Okay, so I'll tell you just a quick thing real quick. So Romney and his girlfriend pull over on the side of the road. They pull over in this area. They start walking around their camping area. They hear a Bigfoot howling or screaming coming from the woods for 10 minutes nearby, right?
Wow.
And it scares them. It scares them. So what do? They go back to their camp and start barbecuing, and it's pitch black out, and some kind of monster was just screaming off in the distance.
Sounds like something we would do.
Yeah. So anyways, so Romney gets woken up at 2 a.m. from his girlfriend nudging him, and her name's Katrina. And Katrina is barely whispering, and she says that she's so scared you could hear her heart thumping. And it sounds like you could hear someone talking outside of their camper van, she says.
Wow.
Romney said that he could hear talking, but he couldn't make out the words or understand the language or what was being said. The chatter, as he called it, went on for about 5 or 10 minutes. Suddenly, the van shook as if a car had bumped it. They then they heard their camping table and barbecue come crashing to the ground, followed by some strange vocalizations. The vocalizations they described started off sounding almost monkey-like, and they would end with the grunting, almost like a human. Like I don't know what they mean by monkey-like. So a monkey-like sound like a human. Katrina was scared, and she rolled over in the bed to go grab onto Romney. And when she did, she kicked a grocery bag full of items onto the floor in the van, causing it to suddenly fall over. And it says when this happened, the vocalization suddenly stopped. They started hearing footsteps coming towards the outside of the van very close.
Wow.
Romney said they could see the windows being blocked off by something dark and big as it was walking around the van, and it was trying to look inside. I guess they were trying to – they had the window shades down, so the creature couldn't see in, but they could see the silhouette. So this woman kicks this bag down. This creature's kind of like stalking the outside of the van, walking around. And it
sounds
says
slightly terrifying, but we would be there.
It says a vehicle started coming towards them off in the distance, and Katrina saw this literally as their savior. And as the car got closer, the creature ran away off into the bush. Romney jumped into the driver's seat in his underwear and drove off, leaving all of their camping gear outside. They just abandoned it. He said they were so scared. When he looked out the window on their way out of camp, he said the camp was totally destroyed and the items were thrown everywhere. And I guess they drove off and never looked back.
Probably didn't like him in its territory, probably. This is another case of a mean Yowie.
What do you think of that, Nick? Like Nick and Tim, holy crap.
Yeah,
hardcore.
That's crazy. And
we'd go there and taunt it, Nick. You and Jeremy taunt it.
Oh, yeah, I'd have to. Well, no, it's the behavior of a wild animal, and even if it's a proto-human, it's still going to be aggressive to us because it has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years of interacting with us. And again, if they're still around and they're from back in the day when we were cavemen and they're still living that lifestyle, they have an instinct to have an aversion towards us.
Yep.
So they're going to be aggressive.
Generation after generation.
Yeah, it's an ingrained behavior pattern that they've learned as a self-defense mechanism against Homo sapiens, and who can blame them? We do like to shoot first and ask questions later.
I would honestly think it would be kind of cool to go out there to where – I know this was like a terrifying encounter, but I think
we'd chase it. We're not scared of that kind of stuff.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I think it'd be cool to kind of go out there and kind of retrace some of these stories. What do you think, Nick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, continuing on, let's see. This one I thought was kind of odd, and this is something I probably should have brought up earlier. There is physical proof of the Yowie other than footprints.
Yep.
So can you and Nick describe what tree structures are or what nests are or tree breaks, that kind of stuff? And what purpose do people think they serve?
Well, in the forests of all throughout the world, I know most seem to come from like North America, but they're structures in the forest where they're bent or broken, like trees or like at weird heights and things to form what looks like a nest. They call it a nest or like some sort of a bedding area or structure to like basically protect Bigfoot, what they believe Bigfoot to be from the elements.
Yeah.
So they don't know if they're houses or they could even, in some cases, they believe they break them just to mark their territory.
So continuing on with what Tim was saying, so he kind of gave like a general description of that. I guess they said they're not found very often, but the Yowie apparently does the same thing that the North American Bigfoot allegedly does, like what Tim was describing. There have been tree structures found in the Litabella National Park. YowieSightings.com says, this is a quote from them. It says, our main contact during the visit was Tanya. She was very helpful in describing what she and her husband had experienced in the area. We were initially drawn to some trail cam images, but the more compelling evidence was in the form of various vocalizations and growls and footprints that were found in the area. Our initial visit led us to an incredible discovery of multiple tree structures. And they said, I personally looked for any evidence that the structures had been man-made, such as footprints, rope marks, car and tire tracks. And it says there was nothing to indicate these structures had been man-made. In fact, in one location, we nicknamed it Chaos Corner, as there had been so much displacement of trees to form multiple structures.
Very interesting. That one sounds like it's busy in that area.
Yeah, so I guess
or the
what they're
family
getting
group
at
too.
is, yeah, they think it's like a very similar. Viator had a comment to make real quick. She says, all of my encounters in New Mexico, Georgia, North Carolina, and West Virginia happened after chilling by a campfire. Never had to provoke or do anything apparently.
I know, we're just kidding. We don't really provoke all that much. Every now and then, Jeremy and Nick will get like the call blaster, and sometimes that'll trigger him. Sometimes, but Jeremy and Nick are king of taunting ghosts, though. That's a whole nother category.
I'll play the Lord's Prayer unless you.
Here, I was gonna say, do you and Nick check our private chat real quick? So, one thing that I was thinking is,
Didn't you have a sighting video, Jer?
Yes, I do have some videos. I'm gonna do one more sighting, and then I'll play a couple of videos that I have.
Cool. The videos will be pretty interesting.
Yeah,
I was looking at a few myself.
I got one more that I kind of want to describe. So this is a sighting. I'll kind of cut out the first part of it because this guy basically, he's off into the woods doing some boar hunting. And he says he came up to the top of this ridge. He said, look down. He said he sees this creature do the damnedest thing. He says it was walking back and forth between several burnt up trees and hugging each tree. It was pushing the side of its head against the tree. He said, what the hell is it doing? I asked myself as I watched in disbelief as the creature walked to the next tree, wrapped its huge hairy arms around the tree stump. At one point, it stopped this behavior and stood totally motionless, lifted its head in the air and was sniffing the air in my direction as if it could smell me or knew that I was in that direction. It says, as it stood amongst the trees, I got a really good look at the entire body from the ground. You could see it was covered head to toe in dark hair except for its face and hands, kind of like what I was saying. I could see its body was muscular and so thick. Its muscular arms were very, very long, too long for its body, I thought to myself, and its hands looked so long or so large that would have been able to squeeze a basketball flat with one hand.
Wow.
It suddenly...
That's what you want to see.
Oh, yeah, this is almost over. He says it suddenly went back to tree hugging behavior. It kept doing that again, I guess. And in an instant, as it hugged one of the trees, it partially squatted and heaved the dead trunk clean from the ground, pulling it with a huge root ball along with the tree. It smashed the trunk to the ground, making an incredible thud. He says it scared him and his dog, and they ran off, I guess, which I guess it would do to most people.
Yeah, that's a quite an apt reaction.
So my first question, have you guys ever heard of a Bigfoot doing something like this? I haven't.
I've never heard of it hugging trees, but I've heard of it ripping out of the ground, like trees out of the ground.
Yeah, no, there was something on Travel Channel where they did some kind of a breakdown of a video where a Sasquatch was allegedly throwing logs at this guy who was in his backyard in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And they used some kind of trigonometric formula to figure out how big logs were and how much they weighed and that kind of thing. And basically what the scientist on the show was saying, a very strong, massive creature was throwing these heavy logs at this guy's house when he was sitting on his backyard, I think like drinking coffee, looking at the snow. It was wild.
Yeah.
No, Linda has a good point here in the chat. Do you see that?
Let me see. Linda says, I wonder if the tree hugging is like marking its territory. I believe so. I kind of think that's what those tree
Maybe
structures
true.
are. They don't
Maybe,
have
yeah.
100% proof because we don't really know what they are. But I kind of
Yeah,
think
it's
that's
true.
what
Maybe it has a musk and like maybe it was trying to mark the trees or something.
Yeah, no, that's what it sounds like.
So we have about 15 or 20 minutes left in the show. I am going to play a couple videos, and then we're kind of going to answer a few questions that I got over email, and then we'll probably have to end up ending the show here in probably 15 or 20 minutes. I'm going to show a couple of alleged Yowie videos. So let me share my screen. All right. So this one, the only thing about this video is if I make it full screen, as you guys can see, it gets kind of
Yeah.
pixelated. I kind of have to leave it like this. This is only 44 seconds long. I'll play the whole thing without talking, and then I'll probably play it a second time, and we'll do a little discussion about it. All right, you guys ready?
Yes.
It's too dark to be a kangaroo.
Kangaroo.
This is supposed to be one of the best pieces of footage they have of the Yowie.
Very interesting.
It's too dark to be a kangaroo.
Too dark to be a kangaroo, Nick.
Kangaroo, Nick.
Bugger.
The bloody bugger.
That is pretty close, though.
Wow.
It is pretty crazy.
That's insane. That's some gnarly footage right there.
Yeah, it is.
It kind of reminds me of the Patterson Gimlin footage, really. Okay, let me play it one more time, of course.
It's too dark to be a kangaroo.
No, it's definitely something. Very interesting.
So, like, what do you guys think about that? I know I kind of...
Very interesting footage. Like I said, it looks. I like the quality. It's better than a lot of them I've seen.
Yeah, that's one of the better Bigfoot videos I've seen.
This next one I'm going to share, it's actually
And it's
from...
darker than a kangaroo.
Yeah. This is from 2021. Some researchers claim that they actually got some thermal footage of the creature, or they think it was more than one. So let me share that real quick. This is kind of like, it's a news story, I believe.
I seen this.
Oh.
Yowie hunters insist is the breakthrough they've been searching for.
Randomly panning around, and there you have it. Two of them. We were ecstatic. I mean, this was probably the best footage so far in Australia.
Buck and Dean say those blobs aren't human, but creatures 9 feet tall.
The first thing I asked when I got this footage was where was everyone in camp, and then I demanded their heat signatures.
We were kilometres into rough terrain, up in the mountains in the middle of the night.
The closest Dean Harrison has been in a 25-year quest that so far cost him $100,000. The bulk of it spent in Springbrook National Park.
They'll leave stick symbols around the tracks in the bush, and there'll be sticks in the ground.
The hunters say they captured the 2 Yowies on this state-of-the-art thermal imaging camera, which can pick up the heat signatures of any animal or creature quite clearly in dense bushland. As for physically capturing one,
Definitely trying to.
they'll need to if they're to convince the non-believers.
I think that's a load of bollocks.
It's possible, eh? Yeah, definitely possible.
Now that would be a story. Josh Ribber.
Put on pause real quick.
Very cool. I've seen that before. I've never seen it that long of footage. That's pretty cool.
What do you think of that, Nick? Well, I have the screenshot up there real quick. That's like the best, I guess, shot of that.
Well, it's very similar to the thermal image that we caught on Mount Charleston of the Sand Yeti. So I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Again,
I don't think those guys in their professional group, they don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
Definitely not a kangaroo.
Kangaroo.
So here's my thing, Nick. So I know the answer to this, but do you think I should reach out to kind of like one of these Yowie hunters or Yowie sightings on Cops and get them on the show?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that there's like 7 hours behind like our time, so it would be like noon their time if we're doing 7 o'clock here. Linda says Springbrook National Park is in Queensland.
Cool. Good to know.
here's a couple questions. So now that we kind of talked about it for a little bit, and I literally have like 50 stories that we weren't able to share, so we're definitely going to have another show on this.
Mhm.
Let's see. I'm going to ask a couple questions. I have like a few things that we've been getting in email. The first thing, Nick, I was going to ask you this. So in the beginning of the show, I was kind of talking about Aboriginal legends, and I was talking about some of the old theories, I guess you'd call them, theories, legends on the Yowie. Do you think that this could be a ghost-like creature was the first question I got. And that is from a Brandon from Colorado.
It could be a ghost creature. I don't lean with that theory, but that's a common theory to explain Sasquatch in general, that it's some kind of a spiritual entity or a trans-dimensional entity, which could be a viable theory as to explaining why we don't have any bodies, but here we have footprints and nests.
Right.
And, you know, we got, like we just saw 2 minutes ago, we got a clear shot of one on camera, but we never found a body or any sustainable population of them. They just come and go like blips on a radar screen. So are they flesh and blood? I think to a degree. Are they ghosts, trans-dimensional creatures? It's a possibility.
I lean more towards biological, but yeah, I agree. Anything's possible. We don't know.
I guess the next one, what that somebody was going to say something, I interrupted you.
Well, no, what do you think? What's your final thing, Nick? Do you think it's a biological creature?
I think it's a biological creature that kind of crosses over from like a parallel universe that's next to ours, because physicists believe that, kind of going on a Bill rant here, but physicists believe that there's many concurrent universes and dimensions that just lie next to each other, and then sometimes the walls of these dimensions kind of collide with one another, and you can get a glimpse into another world. So remember, like that show, what was it, The Lost World, when we were kids? The the Slee Stacks or whatever. So there's
Land of the Lost, yeah.
Land of the Lost. Yeah, you got the Land of the Lost dimension, and that's where the Bigfoot lives.
I think it was named differently in Rhode Island. That's why he was confused.
Sometimes the Land of the Lost comes into our world, and then sometimes we might go into theirs.
So these next couple questions are kind of basics. I know these are ones that we get all the time. Could it be a misidentification? And I'll have you and Tim talk about that. Like these Yowie sightings. Is there a chance?
Likely. Oh, sorry.
I don't even know. Do bears live in Australia? I don't even know.
I don't know.
There is no bear species in Australia, but this is easily explainable. In fact, it goes into it. According to Google, it says there's no bears in Australia, according to what they know, I guess.
I mean, it's very possible, maybe, but I don't. That thing looked pretty bipedal to me.
Yeah. And the fact that there are no bears in Australia, so.
Oh, so going back, something that Luis asked earlier. Do you think that Yowie are dangerous? I know he talked about that earlier. He's going to go back around, go full circle to his question after talking about the campers and the creature like snarling, ready to charge him in the woods.
And then from a lot of the things, like we were saying earlier, I think they have various attitudes, various they're just different creatures, they're different personalities and everything. So yeah, there's mean and there's nice ones.
So your answer is some of them are dangerous.
Yes, like Bigfoots too.
I think that based on the stories we've heard today and other Yowie stories, if you compare them to stories of the North American Bigfoot and the Russian Bigfoot and various other places, it sounds like the Yowies are the pit bulls of the Sasquatch world. They kind of get a little mean, attack you.
So Linda made a quick comment.
I know Yeti has some really mean ones too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh
Linda
wow.
says the Yowie's been around forever. When I lived in Australia in the 70s, everyone was talking about it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I actually didn't know. I figured people knew about it, but
two or three more questions. So, do you think a creature like the Yowie could exist and not be found? And my take on this, I wrote Bigfoot-like creatures exist on every continent except for Antarctica, as far as I know. What do you and Nick have to add on to that? Like, why is it not found, or how come?
Oh, just the terrain.
The
terrain.
How come you can't just jump into the woods looking for it and find it? I guess
these creatures are they've lived there their whole lives. Their ancestors, their generations. They know how to hide. They know to avoid people. I'm sure for the most part, they're just smart. Yeah, like I said, and then the terrain, the personalities. They all play into like these creatures' behavior.
So here's the next one. I think this is my last question for now because it's getting kind of close. There's not as many Yowie hunters as there are Bigfoot hunters in North America. And I wrote, I don't think Europe has very many Bigfoot researchers either. Maybe this is why there's not more Yowie sightings being reported. Obviously, they're being reported, but I think maybe that's a good reason why we don't get as many as.
Yeah, it's a good point.
As we would hope for. What do you think, Nick?
Well, yeah, if you don't have people going out, collecting the stories and getting the evidence, there's going to be less stories and less evidence. There's a one-to-one relation with those factors. And I don't know if I don't know the factors why there's not as many Yowie hunters as opposed to North American Bigfoot hunters. Maybe Americans are just the more curious people. We like to ask questions too much. You'd have to get into the whole sociological study for that, but
yeah,
I could see Europe though, because Europe doesn't have as much forested area as North America or Australia does. It's much more
except
developed.
for Russia.
To be honest, I kind of want to look into that Mexico Bigfoot that they were talking about.
Me too.
Yeah.
So it's almost. Let's see, we have a couple minutes left in the show. So before we end this, like I said, we have a whole bunch of stuff that we still haven't even really touched the surface on or haven't really talked about. I think we're going to do another show on this. We'll probably give it a couple of weeks, and then we'll go back to another Bigfoot-related show. Next week, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to go live at 7 o'clock next Saturday, 7 o'clock Pacific. You're going to want to mark your calendars for this. We are going to be talking about the 1933 Italy UFO crash. This has kind of been the news lately. We have David Grush, who was a whistleblower for UFOs and an intelligence officer. He talked in depth about this event, so we're going to try and talk about it as best we can. The week after that, we don't know what we're going to do yet, but as far as this show goes, we're going to end the show for this week. Again,
I thought it was a pretty good one.
Oh, this show was awesome.
Fun.
So again, I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. I know I forgot to put our links up on the screen because I was in the middle of talking about different things. So I want to thank our viewers for tuning in. I want to thank all three of us, for Nick and Tim, for joining me tonight once again. This is a viewer-driven show, like I say every week. So I would like everyone to either click like us, subscribe to us, share our videos, anything that you can, anything you do to help out.
Everybody get the word out.
Yep, get the word out. We're a viewer-driven show. We are only a few months old, but so far we're growing pretty steady here. Tune in next Saturday, like I said, about 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific. We'll be doing another great show. And I want to say good night to everybody. Thanks for tuning in.